We shall now look at the minimum specifications for running Windows 10. This is required to ensure a smooth update or new installation of the operating system. The minimum hardware requirements are very similar to Windows 7 and 8, so if the computers you are upgrading or installing Windows 10 are already running either of these operating systems, then there is a good chance that they will already be able to run Windows 10. As we have already discovered that Windows 10 is supplied in two different architectures, 32-bit, also known as x86, and 64-bit, also known as x64. So naturally we would expect some differences. Both versions require a 1 GHz processor. Remember that this is the minimum requirement, as installing Windows 10 on a faster processor will cause it to run much smoother. Next is the RAM requirement. On the 32-bit you will need a minimum of 1 GB, and the 64-bit version 2 GB, because the 64-bit version is dealing with much larger numbers. However, most computers these days will have a minimum of 4 GB, and for the cost of RAM, if the system you intend to run Windows 10 on has less than this, then maybe it's time that the system is upgraded, because this would enhance the computer's performance considerably. Just remember that if the system you are running is 32-bit, then the maximum memory for that system is 4 GB. So if there is a possibility that you may want to have more memory than this, it may be better to install the 64-bit version, assuming that the computer architecture is 64-bit. Next is the minimum disk space requirement for Windows 10. The 32-bit version needs 16 GB of space, as opposed to the 64-bit version that needs 20 GB. Once again, most computers have much larger drives than this, so it would not be a major issue. Next is the graphics specification. This is more about compatibility rather than memory dependent. In both versions it should be compatible with DirectX 9 with WDDM1. This is a very old standard and once again should not be a major issue. Finally is the screen resolution. In both versions the screen resolution should be 800 by 600 pixels. Once again, this is a very old standard, since most current monitors should have no problem in displaying 1280 by 720. To give you some idea on the speed of a machine that has been set to the minimum specifications, we can see the following. So you're able to appreciate the time delay. We have incorporated a timer in the bottom left hand corner. Just be aware that this is real time. First is the personalization. Notice the delay from when clicking the right hand mouse button to it displaying the properties. Next we shall check the screen resolution. Remember the minimum specification is 800 by 600. Now we shall access the File Explorer. Once again, there is a delay in the response. And the properties of the hard drive, once again minimum specification about 20 GB. Notice the free space of 5.44 GB, which does not leave very much room for other applications. Now we shall see what resources are being used by the Task Manager. Here we can see that almost every inch of the CPU is used just to run Windows and over half of its memory. Finding a 1 GHz processor is very rare these days, so we used the slowest one we could find. In this case it is a 2.71 GHz, so if the processor was 1 GHz, then the response time would be even slower than what we can see here. Notice here a peak, so why has the hard drive been used here? This is normally due to a swap file being created. In other words, if there is not enough RAM, Windows will pinch some of the hard drive space to substitute for the RAM. The problem here is the hard drive is slow to react, and hence why at that point it was the slowest. So this is the minimum specifications, and if the system you intend to install Windows 10 on only meets these requirements, then it would be recommended that it is upgraded before commencing installation. One last point. There are many other features in Windows 10 that cannot be utilised if only the minimum specifications is met.